False alarm. I thought that help was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
So if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust? Wait, so if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust?
The last track, I think I only blinked once. I skipped lunch. Blinked twice. Christ, shut your eyes. Now open wide. Fascists took the nation and inflation took a supersize. It's sad to say your teachers couldn't quite make the ends collide. But now you'll probably get to see them on the weekends doing Uber drives. Say lube it with a little oil. One, it tastes expensive too. You'd be surprised how well it helps you open up your throat so you consume the lie of human rights that was sold to you by suits and ties, designer scents on plastic men with patient fangs and ancient vice. You know, the kind of greed that makes a person lose the sight of morals, so it's easier to sleep at night. It's easier to ease their minds and pick a foreign people we can demonize. If you take a sec to sink into how war criminals think, you'll know you'd never want to see inside. If every man's an open book to look within, theirs are bound in human skin and not designed for human eyes. They are wearing human skin, but they can simply not be humanized. They aren't worth the lowest of the poor they swore to crucify. Holy sweet Geneva, there's a mass grave full of dead believers you called the police on cause you don't believe in squatters' rights. You believe the sanctity of human life is relative to human worth in terms of work and dollar signs. So listen when I say you need to find the light of day before it's too late to apologize. Like holy sweet Geneva, here's a mass grave you can colonize. Because you seem to love to talk about the spirit of America. But if you saw the spirit of this land's supposed character, I think that you'd be calling ice. And I also think the actual America is truly represented by the call to ice. Is represented best by the descendants of some immigrants bitching about the immigrants, snitching on some immigrants, then playing dumb and innocent like good little Christians when their neighbors get deported. Until they're screaming at the store that they waited 20 minutes more because the staff was short. Because some ordinary bigot started waging war on immigrants. And honey, we'll just keep deporting because like your first vote and each election since, it turned out that the man you are supporting ended up to just be twice the fucking bigot as the bigot that he wins against. But I was not among the herd. A single word from Biden stirred a tingle in the cynic sense. I knew that a vote for Joe was more like Reagan 2.0. I could smell that sarin smoke that choked around the river bend, and so I spoke about a living end. About an anchor thrown to drowning men, a democratic president, a country never found again. A man who marinated in the blood this land was founded in. A crime bill that contains sufficient lethal ends to drown us in. All written by a man who wears a crown of sins, who currently is sleeping in a bed of sins. And it's no wonder those who truly understand the meaning of democracy are not too keen to let us in. It's no wonder other countries can't conceive of skipping meals or missing rent or being on the streets because you can't afford your medicine. That's uniquely American. And Joe has proved to be the most disturbingly American of presidents. I shiver when I think of what's to come if he's the precedent. It's a wonder I can even function still to process all the rhymes through all the resonance. Bless my heart, I'm liminally reticent. Standing on a threshold of bone, ash, and sediment, near a faded marker claiming this to be the grave of all my sentiments. Exactly where I left them all and just how I remembered it. It's a wonder I can even function still to process all the rhymes through all the resonance. Bless my heart, I'm liminally reticent. Standing on a threshold of bone, ash, and sediment, near a faded marker claiming this to be the grave of all my sentiments. Exactly where I left them all, and just how I remembered it.
Wait, so if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust? Wait, so if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust?
Fuck.
Wait, so if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust?
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are.
stagnate, a living wage, snap the chains, bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph or Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren. Say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights, forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't.
Here's a song about the great glory of America. F you, USA, fuck the Constitution. We can't give you any money 'cause we spent it on bombs. F you, USA, fuck the Constitution. Privatize all life. Polluted, some genocide from Collin Revolution. Life is just what
We want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
We're live. We did it. We pressed the buttons.
We did it! Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Tommy somewhere! Yay!
Yay!
Everybody!
Run out.
Indie News Network, collaborative family of independent content creators.
It's American tradition. It's Indy. It's Jesse. What's up, everyone?
What's up, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden.
It's good to be here. Finally, I'm on Extra Bulla.
I'm Tatami of the YouTube channel Tatami's Diary.
Welcome to another episode of the show your parents warned you about. It's Reef After Dark.
This is Tatami Nation Politics.
Hey guys, this is Tommy. Tommy Nation Politics.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Politics is Survival.
Hello, my name is Lucy from Blue Moon Red Wine, and I'm very happy to be a founding member of INN.
Well, hi, everybody. It is, how did we miss that?
We're also available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Again, Spotify.
On Twitter and Instagram.
YouTube.
Twitch.
Odyssey.
Facebook Live.
Discords and Telegram.
Also on Amazon, Apple, Google Podcasts there also.
Again, this is it. We use all these platforms to make sure that no one platform can shut us down. That's the other reason for diversification. They're trying to eliminate us.
It's kind of cool the way that these indie media networks, they operate differently than these other networks in that you're going to get honest opinions, you're going to get honest commentary because we're not sold out, but you're also going to get a lot of like unique personalities.
At Shutdown Amazon is now either co-opted or has explaining to do. In less than 1 month, he showed up to GQ, Teen Vogue, shaking Aunt POTUS's hand.
I still always like to say thank you and shout out the volunteers and the people that actually make this show happen.
I like it better than anything else.
Yeah, we know, Nancy. We know.
Guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. Free-thinking, innovative, and open-minded new independent progressive media.
We'll see you next time. This was the Politics of Survival.
To keep questioning everybody's motivations, and thank everybody for coming tonight, and we'll see you next week, and download the podcast. Bye, everybody.
Don't vote Democrat.
Keep listening to what little birds have to tell you.
Please wash your ass.
Keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Who are these people?
What's up, fam?
Hi.
It's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
It's Wednesday. What's up? How's everyone doing?
Is this going to be a new thing that I have to suffer through every week?
Every week, yes, probably. At least every other week.
Okay.
We're a little early this week because we figured
We're a little early because we figure you guys are traveling probably right now, or you're now settling into your place of libations and fun over the next few days, or you might be food prepping right now, which is something I still need to do.
Yeah.
For the big day tomorrow. But we wanted to be live anyway to keep you guys company while whether you're traveling or getting your food ready for tomorrow, that you'll at least hopefully be listening to us.
Yeah.
Hanging out a little bit. But just want to say hi. And be with you all today.
Yep.
How you doing, Reef?
I'm doing good. Got the turkey in the brine, all that stuff. That's going.
Yeah, I still need to do that.
Made some pies. That
what
I
kind
didn't
of
need. Peach pie and a buttermilk pie.
Buttermilk.
Yeah, it's like
a custard type thing, or
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Almost like pecan pie without the pecan stuff. Like it's good. And I'll probably make a pumpkin or sweet potato or both.
Nice.
So
you're doing that tonight, or are you going to do that tomorrow?
Either tonight or tomorrow. That shouldn't take me long. That's those pies are easy. But yeah, we'll be doing a bunch of that tomorrow. I'll have eaten way too much food and stuff, but today we brought some stories with us today. So if we want to get into it, I'm
sure.
This is as you know, Reef Breland. You can find my handles under there, and my co-host Collin, Care Bear Radix-Carter. the one and only. And you know,
Probably the one and only.
like, and these are our stories. We've got
since we are celebrating Thanksgiving, we do have a Thanksgiving story, but not in a way that you think. About this protest that apparently takes place every year in Plymouth. So we're going to talk a little bit about that first.
Cool.
And then Reef curated this article for me. I am a fan of Black Panther. And I did see Black Panther 2 earlier today. Person who wrote this article, who is connected to the Black Agenda Report, had some things to say. And we're going to talk about it. I'm going to try and give a more balanced view than what he did, but I think it's still worth kind of talking about in light of the themes that do present itself in the movie that we can share. And
I brought there was some weed pardons in Oregon, and if you're pay real close attention to the show, you'll notice that this thumbnail is very similar to when I did Biden's weed pardon. It might be because they're very similar. We'll get into it. And as well as just some updates on Twitter 2.0 with old Musky Musk. You know,
which still exists.
Yes.
As of now, at least.
Right. So it still exists. So it didn't die. Still here. But yeah, there's some changes there. And article from Caitlin Johnstone explaining how things should change specifically. But anyway, you want to get started, fam? You ready?
We can get started. So let's go start with our Thanksgiving type story. So hold on. Still trying to get used to doing it this way versus Zoom.
Here, I can. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, thank you. So this article is the 53rd National Day of Mourning, Indigenous Pride, Power, and Protest, written by K. James, which I believe was, think probably Resistance curated this, but he probably wrote it in Workers' World.
Yep.
So the article is as follows.
Click.
Work.
Yes. You went the right way the first, and then you went back. There you go.
All right. What are the United States foundational myths? Who created them? And who do they erase and harm? For the past 52 years, United American Indians of New England and supporters have gathered on so-called Thanksgiving Day in Plymouth, Massachusetts, to ask these questions, confront cellular mythologies, and commemorate a national day of mourning for the indigenous people murdered by settler colonialism and imperialism worldwide. The National Day of Mourning protest was founded by Yamsuta Frank James, an Aquinnah Wampanoag tribal member. In 1970, Wapsuta had been invited by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to give a speech at a banquet commemorating the 350th anniversary of the arrival of the Pilgrims. The organizers of the banquet imagined that Wapsuta would give an appreciative and complimentary speech, singing the praises of the American settler colonial project and thanking the Pilgrims for bringing civilization to the Wampanoag. However, the speech that Wapsuta wrote, which was based on historical fact instead of the hollow fiction portrayed in the Thanksgiving myth, was a far cry from complimentary. In his speech, Wapsuta not only named atrocities committed by the Pilgrims, but also reflected upon the fate of the Wampanoag at the hands of settlers. The speech contained a powerful message of Native American pride. Our spirit refuses to die, wrote Wapsuta. Yesterday, we walked the woodland paths and sandy trails. Today, we must walk the macadam highways and roads. We are uniting. We stand tall and proud, and before too many moons pass, we'll right the wrongs we have allowed to happen to us. When state officials saw an advanced copy of Wapsuta's speech, they refused to allow him to deliver it, saying his speech was too inflammatory.
What the fuck? Go ahead.
The speech... You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. The speech contained a revolutionary spirit clearly inspired by the fledgling Red Power movement, which demanded equal rights and self-determination for Native Americans. This without doubt frightened the state officials, whose minds were likely drawn to the 1969 occupation of Alcatraz, a 19-month-long protest involving Native Americans and supporters taking over the abandoned federal penitentiary on Alcatraz Island in California. The occupation of Alcatraz was the first intertribal protest that garnered national attention, and it struck fear into the hearts of the ruling class because it was becoming clear that Native Americans, like African Americans and other oppressed peoples, were saying no more. Clinging to the Thanksgiving mythology, the state officials told Masuta that they would write a more appropriate speech for the banquet, but he refused to have words put into his mouth. His suppressed speech was printed in newspapers across the country, and Masuta decided that something had to be done to ensure that the truth about the Pilgrims was still heard. He and other local Native activists began to plan a protest. The flyer for this protest, which was circulated among Native people nationwide, read, "What do we have to be thankful for? The United American Indians of New England have declared Thanksgiving Day to be a national day of mourning for Native Americans." Members of the African Indian movement, such as Russell Means, American Indian movement, such as Russell Means and Dennis Banks, as well as Native people from all over the country, traveled to Plymouth for the very first National Day of Mourning. On November 27, 1970, a crowd of around 200 Native Americans and supporters gathered on Coles Hill in Plymouth. Native American leaders made speeches about the deplorable conditions Native Americans faced, the genocidal actions of the United States government, and the devastation caused by the Pilgrims. The group went down to the waterfront where they buried Plymouth Rock in sand and painted it red, which it's not hard to do considering how small the thing is now.
Yeah.
But I digress. A small group of protesters made their way to the Mayflower II, a replica of the original Mayflower, and boarded the ship. They climbed the rigging and tore down the flag of St. George, the patron saint of England. They tossed a wax statue of the captain of the Mayflower, Christopher Jones, overboard, along with the flag of St. George.
Good for them.
The protesters then made their way to a recreation of the first Thanksgiving dinner, where they flipped over tables saying that they will not eat the white man's food. One AIM leaders later say of the first National Day of Mourning that it is a day American Indians won't forget. We went to Plymouth for a purpose, to mourn since the landing of the Pilgrims, the repression of the American Indian, and to incite the hypocrisy of a system which glorifies that repression. We fulfilled that purpose and gained a spirit of unity that spread across the land. Every year since the first protest in 1970, protesters have gathered on Coles Hill to observe a National Day of Mourning. At the 1972 National Day of Mourning, a young woman was attacked by the police for wearing an upside-down American flag draped over her shoulders. At the 1974 National Day of Mourning, Masuta and protesters liberated the bones of a 16-year-old Wampanoag girl from the Pilgrim Hall Museum. In 1997, National Day of Mourning organizers and protesters were attacked and brutalized by the Plymouth police, who arrested 25 protesters. The resulting court case and settlement led to the installation of two plaques, one that marked the origin and purpose of the National Day of Mourning, the other commemorating Metacomet, King Philip, who led resistance against English settlers in 1675. The settlement also ensured that charges were dropped against all 25 protesters and protected the right to march without a permit each National Day of Mourning. Protesters will gather on Coles Hill on so-called Thanksgiving Day this year, just as they have for the past 52 years. Key issues to be addressed include the potential overturn of the Indian Child Welfare Act, missing and murdered Indigenous women, children, and Two-Spirit people, the ongoing anti-colonial struggle in Puerto Rico, and clemency for longtime Native American political prisoner Leonard Peltier.
Nice.
As Mourning James, song of Masuta Frank James, and a late co-leader of UAINE, said to the crowd at the 2019 National Day of Mourning, "We will continue to gather on this hill until corporations and the U.S. military stop polluting the earth, until we dismantle the brutal apparatus of mass incarceration. We will not stop until the oppression of our Two-Spirit siblings is a thing of the past. When the homeless have homes, when children are no longer taken from their parents and locked in cages, when the Palestinians reclaim the homeland and the autonomy Israel has denied them for the past 70 years. When no person goes hungry or is left to die because they have little or no access to quality health care. When insulin is free. When union busting is a thing of the past. Until then, the struggle will continue.
Human Love Solidarity put in the chat the live stream to the National Day of Mourning tomorrow. If people want to save that, it's in the chat. But yeah, no, I mean, sounds like some fun shit at least. I wonder what they're gonna do. They're talking about Leonard Peltier, which that's dope. You know,
it's funny because I lived in Massachusetts for 17 years and I never heard of this.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, it's happened every year, right?
Right. Yeah, but I've never heard of it before up until this week when I was researching stories for today.
Okay.
But I think, obviously, like people, there is a myth around Thanksgiving that, the Pilgrims came over and were nice with the Native Americans and they had dinner together to celebrate the first winter here, which was kind of brutal for the Pilgrims here or whatever. Uh-oh. Papa's calling you, I think. But, obviously, people don't necessarily talk about, essentially the genocide, that occurred with the Pilgrims, since then. And yeah, I think this is a good thing that this actually does exist in terms of, protesting the property, the issues in the past. But then at the same time, I loved how they mentioned, like talking about a lot of the things that we talk about, just as far as homelessness, as far as healthcare, as far as, liberation for political prisoners and all of that, they kind of incorporated into this. So yeah, I think, not to be a downer, for tomorrow, obviously, yes, enjoy yourselves, like if you have the day off, you're able to be with family and friends, definitely do that, but also just kind of remember, why we have this day. It's not necessarily out of the belief that the white man, was nice to the Native Americans and they got along. It was the idea of like, there was bloodshed, in terms of, Pilgrims coming here that essentially led to, the execution, basically, the genocide of the Native Americans, in this country. So, keep that in mind as you eat your turkey tomorrow. But it is what it is.
Yep. You have another story.
Are we doing it that way?
I mean, I think.
Okay.
I think, and then I'll do mine.
Hold on, before we do, I have to get a special guest.
No worries. I'll hold down the fort. Rick Solis, you had to take a space to think of what these colonizers did and are still doing. Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, like they're still. I mean, they're still poisoning the water there. I mean, that should be part of the thing too, right? Of like protecting, mourning the people. Like in, I mean, how many are affected by, like, our watersheds being destroyed through pipelines, and like, I mean, there's too fucking many to count, but I mean, just as far as natives are concerned, going through their land, so yay, colonization, woo.
So
eat your turkey.
Yeah, so thanks, Rick. Yeah, Rick says in chat, take a space to think about what these colonizers did and are still doing. So yeah, I think, again, not to sound kind of morbid and not to kind of take light of the day, but that's the reality. So, and I think just kind of thinking about that in terms of, kind of what we talked about last week, like there's still this shit going on, but, we're in a position that we can do something. So whatever we can do to kind of, as a way to combat, the isms that exist in this country and the world, do what you can.
Speaking of colonizing.
Speaking of colonizing, and I have a special friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got just to show how much of a fan I am, Black Panther. Prince, well, in priest mode, I call him. The Funko of T'Challa just shows how much.
Put him
Yeah,
up
I
again?
mean, I am. Huh?
Put him up again. There you go. Yeah, there he is. Looking good. Little Funko boy.
So, fun fact, I actually have this shirt that he's wearing here.
Nice.
Because I dressed up as him in Halloween 2019, and that shirt has actually come in use several times since then. So,
yeah.
But speaking of colonizers, so like I said, Reef curated this article for me from the Jack Gender Report, which was written by Jared Bell, which I believe I have to check if I remember correctly. He's actually a professor. He is a professor at Morgan State University outside Baltimore, Maryland, and he has a podcast. I forgot the name of the podcast right now. But he wrote this article, Wakanda Must Fall, which provocative title. And like I said, I read this before I watched Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I saw it earlier today. So I have a little bit of context, but I did kind of spoil myself as far as what happened. So I didn't know what was happening prior to watching it. Personally, I actually did enjoy the movie. It's definitely different from the first. But Jared has some things to say about this movie that I will talk about a little bit. So he writes, you can actually zoom out.
Yeah, I got you.
This new film is rightly called a fantasy, and not just because Wakanda doesn't exist. If Black moviegoers are not aware of the dangerous politics it espouses, they'll find themselves believing in things far worse than non-existent kingdoms. This white Western pan-European fantasy film, where all of its original colonial subjects fight each other to see who will be safe from them, is a political mess. The limitation of existing curse words and my appropriate vocabulary inhibit my ability to convey my disdain for the politics in this movie, but what follows is my best effort. Just so to be clear, I hate Wakanda Forever.
Is it going there?
I'm on.
You got it?
Okay.
There it is.
Yeah, it took some time. In the first film, we are introduced to Wakanda, a magical, isolated nation in Africa protected by a meteor-infused plant power, providing them with untold technological and spiritual power, none of which is used to positively impact world history as we know it. Radical internationalist politics are demonized in the antagonist Killmonger, who is dispatched by our hero, who proceeds this by film's end to further please his Western allies by promising to share those resources. In Wakanda Forever, the politics are worsened by expansion to incorporate Indigenous and Latin American communities, who are all found to also have been so blessed by the special plant power and who use it to escape the plague that was the arrival of Spain. But once technology is developed that will help the West find that powerful resource, Telecon, its friend causing its leader Namor to seek an alliance with Wakanda. Oh, I should say this. Spoilers. Spoilers. So, if you don't want to know what happens in the movie, if you haven't seen it and plan to see it, come back in like 25 minutes. Or if you clip it, or when it's clipped, Fanto, thank you for
Hold on, I've
clipping.
got to get secret plant power. I gotta get it in there.
Kind of plant. Not that kind of plant.
Bullshit. We all know the Black Panther herb is sativa. We all know. Like, how else he be running and jumping and shit?
But, yeah. To preface this again, spoiler alert. Don't watch this clip or don't watch this segment if you don't want to be spoiled. Should have said that earlier.
Yeah, you should have done figure that out. God.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, continuing on. However, true to the form of the first film, Wakanda is not interested in radical internationalist solidarity. Despite invitation and warning from Namor that refusal to unite will result in conflict, Wakanda chooses the CIA, the West, and to war with their fellow colonized and hidden people. Don't exactly agree with that, but we'll continue for now. No message could be clearer than that developed over these two Black Panther films. The answer for those colonized by European imperialism is to cut the first deal and be saved by an alliance with the West. Redistribution, reparation, revolution are all off the table. Wakanda Forever is a disastrous bit of psychological warfare during a time when disasters are being pulled apart, solidarity weakened, with ever more invitations to varying forms of neo-colonial existence being offered and defined as its advancement. When an effort arose in 2015 encapsulated by the hashtag Rhodes Must Fall, its goal was to remove the symbolism of a settler colonial past wreaking havoc today on the process of intellectual and radical political development among the people of Anazia, and with those throughout the diaspora saying also that Rhodes must fall everywhere. But if statues of Cecil Rhodes are the relics of the colonialism of the 19th and 20th centuries, then surely the latest monstrosity imposed by Disney must be turned into a neo-colonial relic of the 21st. While so many among the world's majority floated somewhere between no attention or care at all to outright joy at the recent death of a real queen, we are meant to mourn the righteous death of a cinematic one without realizing how much of an offshoot of the original this fake and black one actually is. If one author could more famously say of the first Black Panther film from Marvel that it is not the movie we deserve, then of this one we can no less be clear than to declare that Wakanda must fall.
Ouch.
So to give some context to this, Cecil Rhodes was a businessman, racist, imperialist in South Africa, best well known for, starting up De Beers Diamond Company.
We have actually lineage later today.
Right, which actually is kind of important knowing one of the actresses in the film, for one reason, has done some things that are counter to what, she essentially kind of protested for, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Anyway, I could not pretend with this audience that I have taken the requisite time to craft a better essay or that I am strong in this medium. YouTube rants are admittedly much easier. But I, again, do want to italicize my hatred of this movie, the process it masks, the clear political intent it demonstrates, or worse, my fears as its likely success rate. All I will credit Wakanda Forever is with the gift of my new favorite twist on Spanish and a perfect descriptor of my views of the politics of the film and the world those politics have created. In amor, no more, namor. No love. Yeah. So he actually says
Namor is. So did they? Namor is Aquaman, but Marvel, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And he actually mentions this in the film that, I forgot his tribal name. But he did mention, the ones. So again, spoilers. Yeah. So Namor in Marvel is I'll say 400, 500 years old.
Yeah.
They took their version of the heart shaper herb, and it changed their physiology where they can basically breathe underwater. So in light of, the terrorism of the conquistadors coming into the Yucatan Peninsula, they ended up living
underwater,
becoming sweet underwater. Yeah. So essentially, they created Talokan, which is essentially their version of Wakanda.
Atlantis.
Essentially, their version of the MCU's version of Atlantis underwater. So there's a lot of Meso American influence in this Namor. So, and he actually references the fact, like the priest, his mother was human. She took the heart-shaped herb, so the more he says in the film, he's a mutant. So kind of probably leading to X-Men, probably coming into Marvel.
Coming into the MCU. Yeah.
Yep. But he goes up to bury his mother when she passes on the surface. And then he sees, so I guess it had to be like at least a few years from birth, but like he sees the Spanish conquistadors, doing their thing against, I would say the Aztec people.
Played by what's his name?
So
I know that actor.
Tino Carrera.
I think.
Oh well, yeah, that's
Namor.
He plays Namor, but in this part he's a boy.
Mm.
And basically he sees all of that, goes into a rage, burns the place down.
Good.
But before he did that, the Spanish piece basically says, it's in Spanish, but basically saying, "You are without love, sin amor."
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
So from that, he takes on the name Namor. So, so that's how they explain he got his.
In the books, he was a kind of a straight badass, like
Right.
Aquaman too, but Namor is like even more super jaded, hates like, oh, it's
Yeah.
good,
The way they kind of portrayed him in the film was similar to Killmonger in a sense.
Okay.
That he basically wants to protect his people. He doesn't want to get involved in the surface world. And due to the fact that T'Challa basically opened the country up, to vibranium, he doesn't want that because if they're looking at for Wakanda, they're already starting to look for it in other places. And, and with this herb, this meteor that contains, the chemicals or whatever, of which the heart-shaped herb is actually able to live, there's another meteor in the sea. And the US
wants that shit.
Wants that shit. So they actually, in the beginning of the film, go to procure it, but then Namor and his people basically kill off. So essentially, like, he goes to Wakanda to become wanting to be allies with them, basically like we're two isolationist nations.
Diaspora coming together.
We need to come together. However, there's
Wakanda's like, no, we gotta work with the colonizers
well, not exactly. The problem is, so the character of Riri Williams, also known as Lionheart, she built the tech unknowingly to find vibranium. So Namor basically tells Ramunda and Shuri, find this girl and kill her, or basically, I want to come after you,
Gotcha.
So, but he essentially wants them to be allies against the United States, basically, in terms of them wanting vibranium. So that's, I don't want to give too much away, but essentially that's kind of like the overarching arc, you can say, in terms of what is happening in this movie. And then obviously, like the country is still in mourning. Well, a year has passed. The movie starts with T'Challa passing away off screen and then having his funeral. And then a year has passed to what is happening now, what I just described. So T'Challa has already been gone for a year at this point. So, but anyway, I think I read that.
Yes, you did.
But yeah, no love. It could also have been improved by giving Namor's character a sidekick named Sidorio. Sorry.
Siodio.
Siodio. Yes, I hate. Come on, there we go. Wakanda Forever is a multi-billion-dollar project of the woke imperium, where the state dresses up its internal struggles and projects them back to the world as having been solved. Immigration issues? Those damn Mexicans are treacherous and violent and are coming for what's yours. Black people struggling? Wakanda has magically solved any issues it might have with labor or an economy. Everyone is well dressed and services just happen. Indigenous people? In Image, we can wrap you up with Mexicans and you can have you blame Black folks, even depicting you fighting them on cave art. Meanwhile, white folks, Empire, run around in nice outfits, complimenting each other and cracking jokes. And why wouldn't they? In their fantasy world, Black Panthers only attacked other colonized people and have promised to further suppress them. Best of all, no one is as angry as the continued imprisonment of Luminia, Leonard, or the never-draft releases of Sundiata, Russell, and Malutu as they are at the death of the militarily illiterate, selfish Megalad Queen. It's Angela Bassett, though. Who cares about Asada when we have the literal logo of Cecil Rose de Beers Diamond, Lupita Nyong'o, playing the heroic mother of the revolutionary and king Toussaint. Again, spoilers. So two things with this. So actually, I'm going to wait for the first part because this, because the author references Lupita Nyong'o for this, but she also is mentioned in another thing. Well, not mentioned, but I want to make that tie together in connection to this. But spoilers from the movie. Before he died, T'Challa and Nakia, who is Lupita's character, had a child, offspring, and decided to raise the child in Haiti, away from Wakanda, so that he will not have to have that pressure of living within the monarchy, but at the same time have experience living outside Wakanda. So the idea is, as he grows up, he's basically destined at this point to be the new Black Panther. In this movie. Shuri takes on the mantle of Black Panther in this movie, in place of T'Challa. But essentially, the idea, obviously, is that he will grow up and take on the mantle, in place of Shuri. So essentially, there is a new Black Panther on the rise, so to speak. But his government name is Toussaint. The significance there.
What's the nameology on Toussaint? That's gonna be
well, you don't know Toussaint Louverture. He is the Haitian revolutionary that essentially freed Haiti from France.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's its significance. How
does he relate Lupita Nyong'o to De Beers? Like, what carat value is he giving her? 24.
I'll get to that connection.
But anyway, yes, continue, please.
So basically, Toussaint is will be the new Black Panther, and he says in the movie his Wakandan name is T'Challa. So they named T'Challa Jr. after T'Challa. So.
Gotcha.
However, Lupita does depict a spy working on behalf of a neo-colonial nationalist monarchy whose power has been made available to no African liberation struggle, whose queen is quietly working with the CIA, and whose actions betray another colony, provoking conflicts with them in an attempt to preserve themselves from a colonizer. So perhaps I am being unfair, and we should weep for this queen who tricks Namor, lies to him, ignores his warning, and is willing to give up his people to save her daughter, a scientist whose work threatens them all, that's Shuri, and to help the US. Oh, right, there are Black women. Lupita stepped away from the Woman King, likely in protest of his positive portrayal of women. Not quite, but I'll get to that.
Okay.
That's one of the issues I do have with
the article.
This article.
Yeah.
She did not want to be associated with women she portrays in Wakanda, who are doing precisely the same thing to other Africans and Indigenous people. I'm not sure even Ryan Coogler could write that. Wakanda Forever is a direct assault on the histories of Bangun and the non-aligned movement of the original Hampton Rainbow Coalition, or today's radical solidarity occurring throughout the world in response to conditions which can only be considered improvements held up against the nightmares which compromise the foundation of so much of these efforts. Killmonger is killed physically in the first film as the embodiment of the Black American liberation movement and its radical Pan-Africanism, so he can brought back as marketing once again for the irresponsible politics against which Shuri can overcome to take her rightful position in service of the Empire. Namor is the Young Lords and American Indian movement being depicted as an invading threat from down there. The two should... What?
No, it's just the down there, as in they're underwater, not...
Underwater, yes.
Below the border.
Yes.
Which is technically water.
Although, it also makes sense because Global South.
Yes.
That could also fit too.
Yep.
The two should naturally be linked and seen as heroic and are kept apart by assassination and betrayal and used as symbols to falsely give legitimacy to neo-colonial power. How eerily real is that? Shuri doesn't have to be seen training or defending a challenge. She ascends simply by bloodline and a willingness to combat those similarly oppressed while never turning her anger or power towards the West. All whites get their silly jokes and friendly name-calling, colonizer in handcuffs, which you intend only to remove. Wakanda Forever has earned the hatred of anyone at all politically engaged, desirous of genuine material change, or at all aware of the intended impact of these media products. Danny Glover has tried for many years now to make a film of the Haitian Revolution, and we are supposed to swoon over this little boy being nicknamed Toussaint. We are supposed to be excited over a fake Iron Man suit being developed to attack indigenous people. Killmonger needs to be, again, turned into a villain so that Shuri can keep herself from killing a man who had been protecting his people from genocide for more than 1,000 years. All to protect an African kingdom proven powerless or useless to the world's majority, but who will not use its capabilities against even one they had happily called all film colonizer. Or is that alone supposed to appease? You slap the French on the hand when they invade to attempt to steal your resources, but when the Moor shows up, not to steal, but to help protect, you're ready to war? Or you thought we would be happy if the Queen is black? Our queer community should be good now with that one kiss in service of the Empire. Please, #Clay Davis. The Guardian did us a favor by self-reporting on the UK's imperial hatred of Pan-Africanism and socialism when recently discussing their surveillance of Kwame Ture. We've already talked about that on this channel, I think.
Yep.
I want to say back in September.
Speaking of the queer community.
Yeah. Well, here is Empire's response to that ongoing concern. Africans who only reach out to the diaspora when one proves to be a rarest of scientific talent, and who war against indigenous people while protecting the West. As we left the theater, I knew my words for my children would be insufficient, as they still are here, though I am confident that Black Agenda Report readers will understand the point well. I told my daughters that to truly appreciate what the film is doing and to evolve the appropriate hostility requires close study of and involvement in the histories and movements Dorabra bin Wadad had said to have been made stealth, in part by films like these. If any value is to be made from intensity and redistribution of this anti-Black, anti-revolutionary product, is in recognizing the efforts being taken to assure we have always remained only a potential threat.
Yep.
Wakanda Forever is its own hopeful title. Forever are we to see our ambitions for a better world in a Wakandan fantasy one, as Lawrence Grand Prix suggests, is based not on culture, or would I add political organization, but on the random divine act of a meteor delivering a plant, and one based on quiet isolation and ultimate service of empire. Forever are we to have our political aspirations defined and diverted by Marvel, Disney, and characters now created by dead white men. No more, no love, seal deal, yes I hate, I hate all of that passionately. From England to Wakanda and everywhere else and in between, all queens and kings must go, and hashtag Wakanda must fall.
Honestly, it would make for a great movie.
What?
Well, I mean, Wakanda falling in this light, you know,
right?
Like, even if it was a fan made one, because they don't lose the power of the nations, like, you know, like, to me, that would be the thing where it's like realizing their actual place in the world. You know what I'm saying? That they are.
You know what? That's not to say that may not happen.
Yeah.
You know, that's not to say that may not happen, you know, in the MCU.
Right. Namor and them might team up and, like, you know.
Right. And I think the way the film, and actually Namor, his character, well, the character Namor says it in the film, because I forgot her, Namora, funny enough, like another Talakanian who's in service to Namor basically says, why didn't we essentially defeat the Wakandans? Because eventually at the end of the movie, they make a truce, you know? And he says, you know, right now, Wakanda has no allies. They're going, and as far as the vibranium, because the outside world, the Americans don't know about Talokan yet. So they're still kind of, you know, in secret right now. So any vibranium that the Americans are going to go after would be in Wakanda.
Gotcha.
And basically Namor's thinking long-term and thinking, you know, right now our only job is to form an allegiance with them. And because in the movie Shuri does visit the capital city and she has some empathy for Namor and his kingdom, you know, he's like, eventually they will have to come to a point where they have to ally with us. In light of the vibranium that they have, that now the world is after it. So it does open the door for them to be in allyship. I would say now, but I think definitely in future movies within the MCU. But my thing overall with this article, which I did share with you before we went live, I get what he's saying, and I do agree, you know, as far as, you know, the colonialism and imperialistic views, you know, that we do see in the movie. The issue that I have with this is not meant to be, as I said to you, a critique on current geopolitical ideology, essentially. At the end of the day, this is a movie that you cannot, it's not, I mean, you can watch it on its own, but it's not going to make much sense if you haven't seen the first Black Panther, and it's not even going to make more sense if you don't know the other movies in the MCU and where this is built up. You can't watch this in isolation. You have to watch this in the context of what has happened in previous MCU
well, the Marvel
movies.
Does do a pretty decent job. Like, you wouldn't appreciate it as fully, but
right.
Yeah.
I think especially more so now. Like, you can't watch this movie not know what happened in the first. And you can't really even watch Black Panther 1 if you haven't seen, you know, I don't think you necessarily need to see all the movies within the MCU so far, but definitely you have to see, you know, I'm trying to remember what movie, the first one, Civil War. That's the first movie Black Panther does appear, to kind of know the progression from that till now. So I think my issue with Jarrett was he just took this movie in well, he saw the first Black Panther. So, but he took those two movies in the context of looking at it from that scope and just being like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, which totally get. And I think, but
like
for me,
a lot of it,
right.
Like,
but for me, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that, like, as far as the overall story is concerned, he's bang on with that stuff, in my opinion, where it's like,
yes, Yes.
You
As
know.
far as like, again, if you look at it in isolation, yes. But in terms of the MCU overall, this is, at the end of the day, this is a fantasy film.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's
like,
what fantasy would you like to see in that case? And obviously Hollywood has a specific one. You know?
Right. Like, and don't forget, I think one thing about these movies in the MCU is Ryan more than likely didn't necessarily have carte blanche to write whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
There is an umbrella plot that this movie is going to lead into something big. So we don't know entirely what that is yet, but my guess is, given
you know what I want.
First, what do you want?
It's real simple because he is an MCU character. Call up Wesley Snipes.
Oh, Blade. Okay.
We're gonna bring Blade into this. It's gonna be a Blade and Black Panther movie, and it's gonna be great. You know, like we're gonna call white zombies motherfuckers. It's gonna be It's gonna be R-rated. You gotta do. Blade's got to be like the Deadpool. You got to do it like. It's got to be Wesley Snipes being full Wesley Snipes. You know, like you can't do it any other way. You know,
right? But again, my take on this is, and I want to try and be as balanced as possible because while I definitely understand what he's saying, I think again, looking at it within the context of the MCU, if we looked at the first 4 stages, the main driver for the motivations of everyone in those films essentially led up to the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
You know? What it's looking like now, like, I guess through stage 6, I guess, at least, the main driver is seemingly looking like vibranium. So Wakanda is going to be a big issue. Right, the heart-shaped herb specific. Well, no, not even the heart-shaped herb necessarily, but vibranium itself.
Yes.
You know, so that puts Wakanda and Talokan, I would guess eventually, like they're gonna be mentioned. I would guess they're gonna be the driving force in future films. That would be my guess.
Wonder if they ever bring Russia and China into this MCU stuff at all, because they would, but it would be favorable to China, but not like too favorable, you know?
Right. But the way I kind of viewed the relationship between Wakanda and Talokan, those nations in the movie, I saw it as, yeah, I did feel like, well, I'll say this with Shuri because she was essentially the star in this movie. She lost her brother. Again, spoilers. She loses her mother in this film. And losing her mother was the driving force. You know, this was after she visited Namor in his kingdom. Her losing her mother was essentially the driving force for her essentially to become Black Panther. You know? My issue with that, and I will, to his credit, the author in this article, obviously she was angry. You know? I do feel her anger was misplaced because she blamed Namor. I think directly because he essentially killed her mother.
Yeah.
You know? So I get that from that context, but I can also see that as, and I think within the context of the film, she was in grief basically for pretty much most of the movie.
Right.
You know, she was still grieving over T'Challa being dead. You know, and then eventually she lost her mother, and obviously Namor was the one who essentially killed her. So,
I also feel like, I mean, he did kind of play into that with like it's similar to gang violence, where it's like that's what they're trying to portray almost in this, like, this is how you can get people to pit themselves against each other, you know.
Right.
So
again, you know, I feel like in certain ways, Shuri's anger, she had the right to be angry.
Yeah.
But I felt like her anger was misplaced. Because really, she knew what Namor's intentions were. He told her what her intentions were. You know, he didn't want to get involved in that way. He wanted Wakanda to survive in the same way he wanted his kingdom to survive. You know, so the issue was Riri, who created the technology to find vibranium elsewhere.
That's the what are those girl? I know that girl.
Right. Like, she was the issue. And Shuri and Wakanda's being in this case wanted to save this girl.
Yeah.
You know. So that was the problem. You know, this girl essentially was in some ways the problem. So whereas I feel like the problem is not so much it wasn't so much her, but the government, which I felt was underplayed. Like, it wasn't like, so I feel that's not to say they won't do this, it won't get to that later. I'm sure they're going to address it later. But I think my critique is everything was done in my opinion, because of plot. Because of there's this umbrella plot that we don't fully know yet that they're trying to lead to. So I think they don't want to give all. Like,
how about we get? We'll go get Blade, Wesley Snipes. Then we'll go get Danny Glover and Spike Lee, and they're gonna both direct. You know, dude, I'm telling you, they're gonna fuck those elitist vampires up. It's gonna be great. You know, the blood-sucking elite wealthy people. That's gonna be a good one. You know.
So I do want to mention something regarding something that was said in the article. So The Woman King was mentioned. This was a movie that came out, I believe, also in September.
Yeah.
And wasn't well received by Black people. You know, I didn't see it, but the article made mention of Lupita. She had a role in this film, but for reasons that will be explained in this clip, she decided to walk away. So I think the article made point of, okay, Lupita walked away from this movie because of reasons that you'll see in a minute, but she's now currently the global ambassador for De Beers.
Oh,
you know, so it will make more sense once we play this clip. It's about 4 minutes long. So
running it now, boss.
The Woman King, the brainchild of social justice activist, producer and former actress Maria Bello and Dana Stevens, is in theaters. Sony, who greenlit the movie in 2020, surely thought they must have had a movie that was with the times and would resonate with audiences everywhere, making it the next Black Panther at the box office. Instead, its opening weekend is marred by the hashtag Boycott Woman King trending, and the ones driving that hashtag hail from the Black community. In this editorial, I will begin with exploring what is so bad about The Woman King, the measures the studio have gone through to protect it, and what lessons should be learned from this. Now, full disclosure, this is a part of history that, like most, I am not too familiar with. My fellow YouTuber and good friend Mr. H Reviews has done his research on the matter though. So this first came on my radar through his video on the topic, and our subsequent discussion on it, both of which you will find linked in the description. Since then, I have done some reading on the topic myself, and while I by no means can claim any kind of expertise on the topic, it is pretty clear even from a superficial reading that the Dahomey were villains. To the point where one can assign terms like good or evil, they were without a doubt, and without much grey area, sheer evil. They weren't merely slavers, they were practically perpetrators of genocide. History versus Hollywood writes, and I warn that this is a graphic account. The Kingdom of Dahomey was a bloodthirsty society bent on conquest. It was customary for the Dahomey to return home with the rotting heads and genitals of those they killed in battle. They conquered neighboring African states and took their citizens as slaves, selling many in the Atlantic slave trade in exchange for items like rifles, tobacco, and alcohol. Many of the slaves they sold ended up in America. They also kept some slaves for themselves to work on royal plantations. The business of slavery is what brought Dahomey most of its wealth. For them, it very much came down to either enslave others or become enslaved yourself. The women warriors, the Agoji, fought in slave raids along with the male fighters. There are accounts of Dahomey warriors conducting slave raids on villages where they cut the heads off of the elderly and ripped the bottom jaw bones of others. During the raids, they'd burn the villages to the ground. Those whom they let live, including the children, were taken captive and sold as slaves. The movie strategically downplays this part of Dahomey's history so as not to complicate the story with the truth. Each year in Dahomey, roughly 500 slaves and criminals were mass executed in large-scale human sacrifices during the religious ceremonies of a festival known as the Annual Customs of Dahomey. Most were sacrificed by way of decapitation, a method of killing widely used by the Dahomeyan kings. The 1727 annual customs of the Dahomey ceremony reportedly saw as many as 4,000 people sacrificed. Also, when the Europeans banned slavery, the Dahomey kept at it. John Boyega's character, King Giso, is a real historic character. But Viola Davis' character, Naniska, who demands the Dahomey stop slavery, is entirely fictional, even though there are historic references to a teenager girl of that name. Only she didn't demand slaves be freed so much as she beheaded them. In other words, the movie The Woman King takes some extreme liberties. Of course, that is nothing new. Movies like 300, The Patriot, and U-571, to mention but a few out of many, have changed some events or ignored some context for the purpose of furthering a narrative. But the liberties taken by The Woman King go beyond that, and well into overt falsification of history territory. It's one thing when a Marvel movie does it, or a genre flick like The Mummy, because they never claimed to be historically accurate in the first place, or based on real events. The Woman King does both. That is the key difference here. If the producers were hoping for another Black Panther, and they were, they can't be pleased with the response. The Rep wrote, "Who is driving the hashtag boycott Woman King trend on social media in protest of the Viola Davis starring historical epic that hit theaters today? Perhaps surprisingly, it's not the same people who dropped racist memes in reaction to the first look at Halle Bailey in Disney's live-action The Little Mermaid trailer. Critics don't have an issue with Davis playing a strong black leader in The Woman King, but are alarmed that the history of the Dahomey tribe who sold other Africans into slavery has been whitewashed. Time to boycott the Woman King movie. The film is about the Dahomey and Benin that traded slaves into the transatlantic. This may be the most offensive film to Black Americans in 40-50 years, wrote Los Angeles attorney and producer Antonio Moore. Let's be honest, folks. It's a movie about an African tribe famous for selling slaves to Europeans that was made into a female empowerment story by two white women writers. You don't have to be very woke to see the problem here, wrote one tweet.
So yeah, that's why Lupita, because as I said, Lupita was supposed to star in this movie. And then, from what I understand, doing some quick research, she got the script. I believe she went to Benin to hear more about this tribe and this kingdom. And when she found out what happened, she basically was like, allegedly, she was like, "Nah, I can't do this," and she pulled out of the movie for the true portrayal of what the Dahomey did.
Right.
So, as I said, it's kind of ironic that and I think this is what Jared Bell was kind of mentioning, she pulled away from that movie for that reason, but she ended up being the global ambassador for De Beers, which is known to be a blood diamond company, essentially.
Yeah.
So, so it's kind of like, why was that all right? But this was, like, why was that not okay for you to walk from away from that? But you basically took on this ambassadorship with De Beers. So, so I think that was kind of the argument, which rightly so, he was making. But again, regarding Black Panther, again, for me, if you look at it as a standalone movie, which you cannot, it's very fair for the critiques that Jared Bell was making. That being said, it's not a standalone film in of its own. You have to kind of watch it in terms of what's happening in the MCU. And given, like, we don't know what the deal is in connection to, again, I think a lot of the issues that he had were kind of related to, basically plot devices, as a means to keep the story going, but as a means to kind of keep the overall arc of whatever this next few phases are going to be, to have a driver for that too. So until we kind of know those ideas for sure, then I do feel in certain cases he was kind of being somewhat harsh in his critique. I didn't hate it. I found it enjoyable for different reasons. I think mostly, I was curious how they would address Chadwick Boseman's death. And I think, as I said to you, I felt like they dealt with it in a very tasteful way. That honors his memory, but is able to continue to push the Black Panther story going, which I thought was, actually it was kind of genius of the way Ryan Coogler did it, which, I think was fabulous. But again, like, at the end of the day, this is a fantasy film. So it's not going to be perfect. It's essentially telling a story, That being said, like,
it could have been way better.
It could have been way better, but I don't think this was the movie to do that. Like, make a standalone movie where it addresses those issues. I think in a more realistic way.
I mean, but I also feel like it's the overall framing, and it's like, I just think you don't have to have that story to get the same outcome.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I do feel, though, and I think this is definitely what I did take away, was the displacement of anger Shuri had for Namor, when I felt like she really should have had it for the American government in the film.
Well, and it should be the entire, like, I mean, that's the thing you have to do, is you have to, like, which they won't do in the MCU. I mean, that's why it's a problem. It's Disney won't do it. It's it's the fact of, like,
no, I mean, this is all capitalism at the end of the day. They're a part of it. So they're not going to call them. They're not going to call themselves out on the shit that they do. Obviously,
but they could at least make, like, again, this is a fantasy movie. You can, it's like, what would the Black diaspora want to see in that film is definitely not what they got.
But but again, they're not going to call themselves out for that. I think this was their way to kind of make mention of it without going all the way.
Yeah.
And I felt in that regard, they kind of did. And again, it feels like Ryan could have gone there, but again, MCU, Disney, like other films, there's a plot line that there's a formula that they have to follow. So I don't think Ryan could have gone full out in maybe doing all of that if he really wanted to. If he wanted to kind of remain, within the franchise like that, I don't think he would have had full reign. That's why I'm saying it would be interesting if like Disney was not involved. And we talked about this. We did a stream, there's a clip where we talked about movies, like more independent movies that are catered to these issues. Again, go back in our like we have it in one of our catalogs. I forgot the name of it right now, but we definitely did some that. I think that's something that could be like in that context be done in that way. But of course, obviously, this is a blockbuster film where the world is going to be watching it. There has to be some parameters. So I could argue that there was a limit to where he could have gone if he really wanted to go there. But given that, and I think you need to have those kind of eyes to see it. I know Nick and I believe JB from RBN did make mention of this in tweets over the weekend, regarding Black Panther. We saw the imperialist themes
messaging.
Messaging, not necessarily a fan of that. I definitely saw it, wasn't necessarily a fan of that. But then again, they're not going to do like a socialist type movie ever. They're not going to.
Wouldn't it be nice though? Imagine how nice that one would be. I'm telling you, Wesley Snipes, we go kill all the politicians. They're all vampires. It's going to be T'Challa's like right there, like it's going to be that. I mean, that's what you do is you have Namor, you have like Atlantis and Wakanda team up against all the empires, actually combat them, and then they own the Avengers. They're the ones who manage the Avengers then. Like, you give them power.
But here's the thing, though, and I thought about this morning because I went back. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched clips of Black Panther 1. Killmonger, for many people, he's not the villain. He's more of an anti-hero. Like, he wasn't wrong in what he was saying at all. If in fact he actually got T'Challa to kind of shift his ideology based on what he was saying, so but the issue that Killmonger had in regards to freedom, ultimately he wanted the kingdom for himself though. So he wanted that liberation, but to the point where everything was switched, that basically the people within the diaspora had the wealth or whatever, but in a way that is but it's still within the confines of a capitalist system now. So
I mean, I think you could do things like show why you have such intelligent people here. Show why you have such physically able people. And it's because you give all your people a certain base of wealth that they can then pull from, We've
talked about Kwame Ture. He's mentioned that before. The idea of like, it's a question of, given our, capitalism versus socialism, the idea of, are the few going to have power or is everyone going to have it? And unfortunately, given Black Panther,
imagine what a scene of like the Wakandan People's Congress would look like. Like that would be dope. Be so good.
But so but this is Hollywood. So at the end of the day, and unfortunately, the idea of capitalism is so ingrained in the Western world that to see anything outside of that, I think is going to be a challenge. So I think just ideologically, people are just kind of expecting that, kind of motif. So I think it would be a very hard nut to crack in terms of forcing people to think, what would it look like? What would Wakanda look like there was no need for a Black Panther in the sense of having a monarchy, you know, that everybody had, you know, was on equal plane in terms of resources.
Or that,
you know,
or that the Black Panther was then elected, you know, which would give you then the ability to like elect a new one, you know. So,
you know, because again, in this movie, Shuri became Black Panther, but she's of royal blood. So,
yeah,
you know, like she was basically the backup, you know, which they played into.
Yeah.
So, and then now she's an aunt to what will be the new Black Panther when the time comes in the MCU. So it's not going to be like a random person, although that was kind of that tried to do that with M'Baku, you know, and now M'Baku is now allegedly the new king of Wakanda, you know, for right now. So again, so even there's some of that, but again, like he's one of the top guys, like he's the head of the Jabari tribe. So even then, there's the idea of like top-down mentality, which you can look at it more in that traditional sense, you know, especially looking like in African tribal systems, especially. But even with that, it's the idea of like, what would a socialist stance look like in Wakanda? Or like have a movie kind of centered around that theme. That would be amazing to see, at least in the mindset that we have, and I think in the mindset that our audience probably has. But you know, but at the end of the day, it's Disney. They're part of the problem, so they're only going to go so far as a story that they want to tell in terms of.
Speaking of heart-shaped herbs, over in Oregon, there was some pardons of 45,000 marijuana offenders in bid to right the wrongs of a failed drug war. Okay, what does that sound like to you guys at home? Because we've heard something happening very close to this at the national level, right? The federal level. Just in case people.
Sounds like a certain president.
Yep. So
did the same shit.
Brett Wilkins over at Common Dreams wants to inform us that no one deserves to be forever saddled with the impacts of a conviction for simple possession of marijuana, a crime that is no longer on the books in Oregon, outgoing Democratic Governor Kate Brown said. So she's lame ducking this, right? Already. You know, she's the outgoing one, right? She got voted out. So, declaring her intent to right the wrongs of a flawed, inequitable, and outdated criminal justice system, outgoing Democratic Oregon Governor Kate Brown on Monday pardoned tens of thousands of people convicted of simple marijuana offenses. Oregonians should never face housing insecurity, employment barriers, and educational obstacles as a result of doing something that is now completely legal. Brown's pardon applies to people convicted at the state level of possessing an ounce or less of marijuana when they were at least 21 years old in pre-2016 cases. So already we're heavily fucking means testing this just based off how much was possessed, right? Because anything over that would then be what, Colin? If we're over an ounce.
You'd be arrested?
Yeah, for what specifically?
I'm not sure.
Trafficking.
Really?
Mm-hmm. The way it used to work was because it's over a certain amount, right? So I'm guaranteeing that possessing is under an ounce. Right? And then above that is intent to traffic. Intent to sell, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Was classically the move. Right? So, regardless of their immigration status, according to Brown's office, approximately 45,000 people will be impacted by the pardon, and more than 14 million in fines and fees will be forgiven. Okay? Who do you think got fines and fees instead of jail time?
Wait, repeat your question. Sorry.
So, 45,000 people will be impacted by the pardon, and more than $14 million in fines and fees will be forgiven. Who do you think those fines and fees were for? Like, who do you think got those?
Like the people who were impacted.
Well, like rich white folk who didn't go to jail for possessing it.
Right.
You know, they got a slap on the wrist. You know, because like, yeah, I mean, this is like, it's good. Like, essentially, it's impacting people that were going to go to jail. You know, so, you know, fines and fees also go to cover court charges and stuff like that. You know, but to continue, no one deserves to be forever saddled with the impacts of a conviction for simple possession of marijuana, a crime that is no longer on the books in Oregon, Brown said in a statement. Oregonians should never face housing insecurity, employment barriers, and educational obstacles as a result of doing something that is now completely legal and has been for years now. My pardon will remove these hardships. While Oregonians use marijuana at similar rates, Black and Latino people have been arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionate rates, said Brown. We are a state and a nation of second chances. For the estimated 45,000 individuals who are receiving a pardon for prior state convictions of marijuana possession, this action will help relieve the collateral consequences arising from these convictions. Brown's move came 6 weeks after U.S. Presidential Joe Biden announced pardons for people convicted of federal simple marijuana offenses, with one major caveat: non-U.S. citizens are ineligible in the case of Biden, right? Observers noted the difference between this and Brown's all-inclusive pardons, as well as the fact that the Oregon pardons are automatic, while people seeking federal forgiveness must apply. Oregon legalized medical use cannabis in 1998 and recreational in 2014. In 2020, under Brown, the state became the first in the U.S. to decriminalize the possession of small amounts of all drugs for personal use. That same year, Oregon voters passed a ballot measure that legalized psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, with a deadline for implementation by January 2023. So that didn't happen yet.
No.
So, although Brown's policies won't free anyone currently serving prison time for marijuana offenses, drug reform advocates cheered her move, with the Drug Policy Alliance calling it great news.
Wait, did you add that one free anyone, or was that already in your article?
It's in the article, but I made it red because people needed to see it. I mean,
lie.
I gotta hit the buttons with the.
They had us the first half. I'm not gonna lie.
Like, they had us. They almost got you. But when we get to this bit, it's not freeing anyone currently serving prison time. So, I mean, sure. I mean, I guess it kept people that weren't going to go to prison going to prison. But like, and save some people some fees and fines.
Right.
Which would mainly affect not the people that it needs to help.
Right.
So it paid some lawyers probably. You know? Like, that's what it did. Today's announcement is a move towards justice for people convicted under outdated drug laws that haven't been in place for years, the ACLU tweeted. Yay, the ACLU getting in on it. Now we need every governor to embrace their power to set people free and rectify the harms caused by the failed war on drugs. Maybe if it did that, people would appreciate it. Since it began, the war on drugs has robbed hundreds of thousands of people of liberty and freedom, the group continued. Black and brown communities especially have been targeted, surveilled, and devastated by unjust sentencing laws that fuel mass incarceration, except it didn't unincarcerate nobody. Like, God. We and the ACLU of Oregon are happy to see clemency provide a second chance for thousands of people who are unjustifiably imprisoned, except no, it didn't in Oregon. ACLU added, now we need every governor to embrace their power to set people free. Yes. And rectify the harms caused by the failed war on drugs. Yes, so do that. You didn't do that. U.S. Senator Ron Wyden said in a statement that pardoning simple possession in Oregon is absolutely necessary to repair the damage done by the failed war on drugs. It is the proper use of the governor's clemency powers, and I hope that every governor and state legislator will follow suit.
They will, because they know it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything. It kicks the can down the road. The American people have consistently shown overwhelming support for expungement and reform of our marijuana laws, Wyden added. It is time for Congress to step up and begin to right these wrongs at the federal level. As we approach the end of this Congress, I will continue to push for meaningful cannabis reform and will fight to get as much done as we possibly can. Although the U.S. House of Representatives passed marijuana decriminalization bills in 2020 and 2022, similar legislation has stalled in the Senate. Yeah, it's because it's designed to. Thoughts, Collin?
It's funny because I got all excited. That's why I sent it to you, because I sent it to you without reading the article. Like,
yes,
just to be very transparent. Like, I got all excited, and then you're like, no, this is actually like a repeat of what Biden did a few months ago. So it's just kind of, I think it's funny. Well, not funny. Funny in the sense of they pulled the same trick that Biden just did.
Yes.
But is very pathetic that...
And that people fall for it, like the ACLU. Like...
Right. But I mean, it makes sense because plenty of people, especially seeing online, all fell for it.
Yes.
You know, because it was just the idea, like, people I saw, like, yeah, like, this is good, but Biden could do better than decriminalize it. But it's the idea of, like, but he didn't. So you're really not saying a thing type of deal. So it's, but that's why I always kind of say, and I said this last week, you have to read the fine print.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to look at like I always say, like, the devil's in the details. There's always some shit, or it's always going to be phrased in a way that is essentially going to loophole politicians and then corporations to still benefit them. And even if you do get something, it's going to be a matter of a crumb that they'll give to you.
Well, and
it's not going to give you...
Human Love said pardoning prior offenses for simple marijuana possession occurred before 2016 in that state, I imagine he means. So yeah, even this it's a big ball of jack shit. Like, you know,
Right. But yeah, it's just political Jedi tricks.
Yeah.
Basically, it's
Good
just
way to
the
put it.
illusion that that you are getting something and it's good when it's really not that thing. So, you know, but again, it makes sense that people fell for it because people fell for it under Biden. And I think only now people are beginning to know now, oh, it's not what he said he was going to do.
Right.
And he's not being called out for it necessarily either. So,
well, and in both instances, it's over the age of 21, right?
Right.
And no victims had to be involved.
Right.
You know, which the cop writes it to make the longest sheet possible, not like it's not like he tries to like diminish the crime, you know?
Right.
Like it's gonna be victims involved. There's gonna be intent to sell because it's over a certain amount. There's gonna be like, so doing it to simple marijuana possession is just not enough. It's just not enough. You need it to have like intent to sell that drug needs to go. I mean, essentially, if it's for marijuana at all, you should be let out, you know?
Right.
Like, other than maybe murder. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that to me makes the most sense at this point. Like, they're trying to, like, let the floodgates out slowly and just don't. You can't do that, you know? But, I mean, especially the shit that does nothing. Like, you have to have it at least do something.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, anyway, speaking of doing something, Twitter still exists and is still alive.
As of now.
So figured we'd do some looking in at what's going on over there at Twitter HQ. I mean, obviously tons of people are like left, right? And supposedly that they cut a bunch of cords on the way out, right? As disgruntled employees, as they should, you know? At least make the guy spend more money to get something working. I'm okay with that. Although having Twitter just die does kind of hurt a lot of people's income. I'm just saying, that we give a shit about. But anyway, some good news. I think, maybe not, we'll see. Twitter is making DMs encrypted and adding video and voice chat, says Elon Musk, and this is over at, what is it? The Verge? That's it.
The Verge.
Yep. At Alex Heath over at The Verge. So Musk says the creator of Signal is interested in helping make it so that I can't look at anyone's DMs if somebody has put a gun to my head. So keep that in mind who's coming over to do that. Twitter's new owner, Elon Musk, has been public about his desire to improve how the social network's direct messages work. In a meeting with employees today, he spelled out exactly what that looks like, framed by presentation slides titled Twitter 2.0. At Twitter's San Francisco headquarters on Monday, Musk told the employees that the company would encrypt DMs and work to add encrypted video and voice calling between accounts, according to a recording of the meeting obtained by The Verge. We want to enable users to be able to communicate without being concerned about their privacy or without being concerned about a data breach at Twitter, causing all of their DMs to hit the web, or think that maybe someone at Twitter could be spying on their DMs, Musk said. It's obviously not going to be cool, and it has happened a few times before. Musk is right about DMs being exposed before. In 2018, Twitter warned that an undisclosed number of DMs between businesses and their customers had been accessible by outsiders for over a year. And earlier this year, the U.S. government charged an ex-employee with improperly accessing user data on behalf of Saudi Arabia, though it's unclear how DMs were or weren't used. It should be the case that I can't look at anyone's DMs if somebody's put a gun to my head, says that Signal dev, I guess? Main dev? Over the years, Twitter has kickstarted and then paused building encrypted DMs several times, but now Musk is set on rolling out encryption as a top priority for the vision he is calling Twitter 2.0. He said that sentence that I've already read for the third time. He told employees Monday. He went on to praise Signal, the encrypted chat app that is run as a nonprofit. He said he has spoken with its creator, Moxie Marlinspike, who is now potentially willing to help out with encrypting Twitter DMs. Ironically, Moxie Marlinspike worked at Twitter and actually wanted to do encrypted DMs several years ago, but was denied that and then went and created Signal. For those curious, the Wall Street Journal has a write-up from 2015 detailing Marlinspike's time at Twitter. Musk went on to say that we also want to have the ability to do voice and video chat via DMs. He acknowledged that Signal requires the sharing of a phone number to start a thread, and that thanks to its account system, Twitter can facilitate secure calling so you don't have to give someone your phone number. Signal has said since 2020 that it also is working to move away from relying on phone numbers, though it has to roll out that ability. I would ask Twitter for comment on what Musk said about encrypting DMs, but the company doesn't have the communications department anymore. So, to continue this kind of theme, Caitlin Johnstone wrote this. If you want to go over to Caitlin's Corner and find that, links for all the articles we've done are down in the description below. Musk's free speech moves on Twitter have so far been unimpressive. I want to do right now, I think Garland Nixon is on Jimmy Dore, talking about how Twitter recently banned his account, as well as Scott Ritter is still banned, Assange, plenty of names that haven't been added back, but Elon still added a few of them back. So Caitlin writes, when Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter was first announced this past April, I said that the purchase likely would go through if the empire thought it posed a threat to its information interests. I said that any reduction of censorship protocols which Musk implements on the platform would probably not be of the sort that make any difference to the powerful, but would instead just amplify vapid partisan culture war nonsense. So far since Musk's takeover, this does appear to be the case. This does appear to be the case. Gotcha. Sorry. In recent days, Twitter has reinstated the accounts of Donald Trump, Kanye West, Jordan Peterson, Project Veritas, Kathy Griffin, and the Babylon Bee. This to date is as close as Musk has come to honoring his stated intention of making Twitter a haven of free speech where people have a digital town square to debate and discuss ideas.
Wow,
and it's not enough. Yeah, exactly. Unbanning, Caitlin writes, unbanning a few famous people will drum up a lot of headlines and online chatter and make it look like you're really doing something. But in the end, all you've done is reinstate a handful of Twitter accounts. You haven't done anything to meaningfully scale back the speech restrictions on your platform. I can already hear the Elon Simps falling all over themselves in a mad rush to tell me it's only been a few weeks and I need to give daddy more time. But they can go lick a Tesla battery, writes Caitlin. Nothing gains anything by giving the billionaire the benefit of the doubt and refraining from pointing out that he hasn't done nearly enough at this point. The time to start criticizing and pushing is right now.
If you had a damn on the soundboard, that would be the
damn. I know, right? I have an emotional damage. I guess that counts, right?
Emotional damage.
The hoes be knowing.
But Twitter is currently full of discussions about which famous people Musk should unban next, but they're completely missing the point. Reinstating a handful of celebrities has no meaningful effect on the free expression of normal people. I don't care that I can see tweets from Trump and Kanye again. I care that people are still banned from the platform for questioning Western allegations of Russian war crimes and voicing unauthorized opinions about the war in Ukraine. I care that people are still banned for questioning vaccines and COVID policies which affect everyone. I care that media from governments the U.S. doesn't like are censored and suppressed, while its reporters are made to carry state-affiliated media labels that media personnel from U.S.-aligned states don't have. I care that mass purges of accounts are virtually always directed at people from U.S. targeted nations. Free speech is important first and foremost, but not because it feels nice to be able to say whatever you want, but because being able to freely criticize the powerful puts an important check on power. Letting celebrities say whatever they want about trans people or what have you is of the feels nice to say whatever I want variety. We're not seeing any increase in the freedoms of speech which put a check on power. In fact, we're seeing Musk pledge to use shadow banning to algorithmically censor tweets with unauthorized speech. New Twitter policy is freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach, Musk tweeted on Friday. Negative hate tweets will be max deboosted and demonetized, so no ads or other revenue to Twitter. You won't find the tweet unless you specifically seek it out, which is no different from rest of the internet. Musk never clarified what he means by negative tweets. It's as vague and subjective a definition as anyone could possibly come up with, which will surely result in abuses and overreach unless clarified. Freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach, is the same dumbass slogan that has been used by proponents of internet censorship for a long time. It basically means that you can say whatever you want, but if it's not approved speech, then no one will ever hear it, which of course isn't free speech at all. It's like saying you have free speech. You can say whatever you want as long as you say it alone in a soundproof room. As we discussed previously, censorship by algorithm is actually more damaging than overt censorship because it happens in a much subtler way that people don't notice, and because it can be done at mass scale. This is the same form of censorship that's been embraced by platforms like Facebook and YouTube, which up until now have been far more restrictive of speech than Twitter. So as far as I'm concerned, Musk is failing the free speech test. Speech is not becoming any freer on Twitter in a way that actually matters, and from all appearances, it's still functioning as a narrative control tool for the most powerful empire that has ever existed. And that's pretty much what you'd expect from a billionaire Pentagon contractor who is intricately interwoven with the U.S. military-industrial complex. And just to keep with the theme tonight, his parents were what, Collin? They owned diamond mines.
Right.
In South Africa.
Right.
People don't get to be billionaires unless they collaborate with existing power structures. And they certainly never get anywhere close to managing critical narrative control infrastructure unless they are devoutly loyal to the empire. Billionaires only come to the rescue in movies and comic books. Elon Musk is no more likely to save the day than Tony Stark or Bruce Wayne. People only believe he's a hero because Hollywood has trained us to look for heroes, but Hollywood only does that to keep us searching for heroes outside ourselves. We'll never get a healthy world if we keep looking to billionaires, politicians, and celebrities to make things better. It's going to have to come from us. The sooner we wake up to that reality, the better. A chance our species will have at surviving the existential crises looming on out horizon.
Nice way to end, actually. It kind of ties in with what we talked about. I think all three.
Yep.
You know, I think especially like, you know, saw the Thanksgiving story, you know, people took to the streets to kind of reclaim the narrative of Thanksgiving that has been whitewashed. Well, we know this, like, by the media, whoever else, looking at Black Panther, you know, the idea of like, you know, like, yeah, it's a great movie, but ultimately it's a rich, very intelligent, you know, Black man, now Black woman, who just happened to be in the state that we're in due to a meteorite hitting the Earth that produced a plant that gave them superpowers.
Yeah.
Is coming to save a country and now ultimately the world, you know, and then, you know, just looking at this Oregon governor, you know, people looking to our politicians to save us, and they screw you over. So, you know, but I think, you know, not to say this, I think, you know, that's a kind of common theme in this stream, but I think kind of a common thread, you know, that we've kind of seen, you know, that we kind of reported on is, you know, we're not going to get anything substantial unless ordinary people are willing to fight for it. And like I said last week, you know, we're heading, you know, we're coming up onto 2023, you know, 2024 is right around the corner, you know, it's going to be, no one's going to be talking about I feel like, especially mainstream media, no one's going to be talking about the issues anymore. It's going to be, if they have now, it's basically going to be Trump this, Trump that, you know, and maybe some other things mixed in. And really the only way that we can have that narrative change is we make a big stink and make big noise about those issues. So, you know, I think, you know, since it's Thanksgiving and this is a time of being grateful or whatever, you know, I'm thankful, and I said this last week, over the weekend, I think, but, you know, thankful for this network, thank you for this platform that we're able to give, yeah, we have an opinion on certain things, but we're able to give that opinion from the idea of we want to give truth to our audience for them to do what they feel is best to do, given the circumstances and the situations that they're in. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a shitty time right now, given inflation and all of that, but I hope that people, are able to find something that they're thankful for, this year, and being able to kind of say, yeah, life sucks. Things might not be working to the best of my ability right now, but I'm here, still here. I'm able to enjoy it with people that I care about, but also, as I forgot who said it in the chat so eloquently said, be mindful of why we have this day or tomorrow. It's not just good feelings and vibes and great food. It's blood was shed,
Lots of it.
and still being shed. So, and I think especially, kind of coming into Christmas where people are more forced to care for our fellow man, have that attitude, especially going this season, but have that attitude after December 31st, because we're going to need it,
Well,
moving forward.
I'm heavily appreciative of our audience who shows up even on days before holiday. Appreciate that. And if you're looking for things to be thankful for this year, you can find most of the links to support us at indienews.network right there scrolling across the screen. You can also, thank yourself, get yourself something nice at, what is it? Indienews.shop. You can peel yourself up some INN merch if you want to.
For someone else.
Yep. For someone else, or otherwise find one of those mutual aid groups, give it to them. They're heavily thankful,
Speaking of mutual aid,
yes,
to kind of talk about next week. So we will be on Wednesday as normal, but on Tuesday, which is Giving Tuesday, I will be, I guess you can call it a special INN news stream, I guess, but it will be connected to the advocacy group in DC that I'm affiliated with, the Teacher Advocacy Group in Power Ed. We use Giving Tuesday as a method to help raise money for the organization so that I and the other teachers who are a part of it are able to continue the advocacy work as far as, the reality of what teachers need, in DC schools at the moment, and what we can do to kind of push the narrative towards having, teachers be empowered and feeling like they're capable of doing their jobs without the interference of, like higher ups who are trying to push down on education that makes teaching difficult. So, so like I said, we're going to have a stream on Tuesday specifically for that. So it's essentially, a fundraiser. So if you are in the mindset of giving, please consider giving, not to me, but to the organization that I'm affiliated with so that I'm able to continue doing that work. So not sure the details yet, but check us out on the Twitters and we'll let you know of a time when it's going to be. It'll be in the evening. But yeah, so we're going to have that stream in addition to INN News on Wednesday as normal. So you're actually going to get somewhat of a double whammy, which is something that Reef has wanted for a while.
Yeah.
But since I have to raise money for my organization, I might as well do that. So
cool.
Yeah, appreciate any help in advance to help me out with that. Any money you're able to give. Again, if you can't, great. Watch the stream, learn something. In regards to education. But if you can, would definitely appreciate your support and love. So thanks in advance.
I need to look at this. The 29th. When is that?
That's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday? Tuesday?
Wait. Next Tuesday. Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
November 28th. So I guess it would be that Wednesday morning for me. But 10 p.m. Pacific on the 29th, right? Tara's gonna be doing a thing, I think. I'll have to work that out with Restream maybe. No, that's 10 p.m. Pacific, not Eastern, so I won't.
Yeah.
That's like 1 a.m. here.
Yeah.
But is going to have, and I think I can announce it. Faina, I forget her last name, but she's a 14-year-old girl in the Ukrainian kill list. So that should be an interesting conversation. People should go check that out. When that happens, mark your calendars for that. Sunday, we're going to try to do How Did We Miss That? I know Indy's been raring to go on some stories since we've missed a couple of weeks.
Yeah. There are a couple of stories that he forbade us from doing today. So
yes. Yep. So if you're interested in those trucker strikes, I would check that out. Train worker strikes on Sunday. Saturday we've got there'll probably be secret shows. Oz over at Roar Media will probably be doing Beauty and the Boomer Saturday night. Trying to remember what else we got. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a Reefer Friday after Thanksgiving.
Oh, and we had our anniversary stream last weekend.
Yep.
So we
whole
had
day worth of streaming. People should go check out if they missed it already.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, but we're also trying to get INN to 1K, which we are at 847. So tell your friends to sub. Sub if you haven't already. We appreciate it. But yeah, otherwise, I think that's it. Anyway, you ready to do what?
Yeah, I have a turkey I need a brine, so.
Yeah. All right, fam. Everyone enjoy your day tomorrow with family and friends. As always, labels are bad. Stay independent, everybody. Good night, fam.
Good night. Happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe.
Bye.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.